She was 60, powerful, respected, untouchable. Yet for months she carried a secret, a quiet love for the new rookie, just 23. No one knew, not even him, until one morning he opened his email and found a plane ticket, sent by her. The email came just after sunrise. He had barely taken his first sip of coffee when the notification lit up his screen. At first he thought it was a mistake, some corporate newsletter or automated travel alert. But as he clicked it open, his heart stopped. A plane ticket, first class, his name printed clearly, destination set, and at the very bottom, the sender, her name. For a moment he sat frozen, staring at the screen. She was the CEO, 60 years old, legendary in her field, admired and feared in equal measure. She had built the company from the ground up, turned it into an empire, and he was just a rookie. 23, barely 3 months in, still learning where to sit in meetings and how to keep his nervous hands steady when she entered the room. Why him? Why now? He read the email again, as though the words might change. It was simple, almost cold in its wording. Your presence is required. Flight details attached. No explanation, no warm greeting. Yet beneath the formality, his chest tightened. He remembered the way her eyes had lingered on him once in the hallway, softer than they should have been. He remembered the briefest smile when he fumbled a presentation, as if she understood him more than anyone else in the room. The ticket burned in his mind. It wasn't just travel, it was an invitation into her world. But for what? A project? A reprimand? Or something no one dared whisper aloud? He leaned back, trying to steady his breath, but his phone buzzed almost immediately. A colleague's message popped up. Check your email yet? The office already knew. Whispers were beginning. His cheeks flushed, though no one was there to see him. He glanced once more at the email. A ticket could mean anything. But one thing was certain, his life would not be the same once he stepped onto that plane. By the time he reached the office that morning, the whispers had already taken shape. They weren't even subtle. Heads leaned together at desks, voices dropped just enough to hide words, but not enough to mask the tone. Everyone knew about the ticket. Everyone had an opinion. First class, must be nice, one voice muttered. Why him? 3 months in and she's already pulling him in, another replied. Don't tell me you can't see it. The way she looks at him. He pretended not to hear, but every step toward his desk felt heavier. His colleagues smiled at him in ways that weren't smiles at all. A mix of envy and suspicion hung in the air. He tried to bury himself in the day's tasks, but concentration slipped through his fingers. Her presence filled every corner of his thoughts. Not just the fact that she sent the ticket, but the memories that now resurfaced. He remembered the first day she spoke his name during introductions. She had read it from her notes, but the way it rolled from her lips felt different, softer, almost lingering. He remembered walking past her office late one evening and catching her looking out the window, her eyes distant, until they fell on him and quickly shifted away. At the time, he thought it was nothing. Now those fragments stitched together in his mind with new meaning. Later that afternoon, he crossed paths with her in the hallway. Their eyes met for the briefest second. Her face, as always, remained unreadable to everyone else. But he caught something. A flicker, a softness, a question she wasn't asking out loud. It unnerved him, because if the whispers carried even a grain of truth, if she did see him differently, then the ticket was more than an order. It was a door. At his desk, the ticket confirmation sat open on his screen, the cursor blinking as if urging him to choose. He could cancel, ignore it, pretend none of this was real. But deep inside, where fear and curiosity twisted together, he knew he wouldn't. He had to go. Not because of duty, not because of ambition, but because of her. She was a legend long before he ever walked through the company doors. At 60, she had the kind of reputation that seemed larger than life, the kind that filled entire hallways with her presence, even when she wasn't there. People said she was brilliant, ruthless, untouchable. She'd built the company when others doubted her, fought her way through boardrooms where no one believed she belonged, and still emerged at the top. To many, she was the model of power. To others, she was the reason they kept their heads down. And yet, for all the stories that circled about her victories, there were whispers too. She had never remarried. She had no children. She lived in a house no one had ever been invited to. Some said she was too focused on work, too cold for love. Others swore she had once been deeply in love, only to lose it, and she had closed the door on her heart ever since. The rookie had never thought much about it. To him, she was the CEO, distant, commanding, a figure to respect from afar. But now, with a ticket burning in his inbox, he couldn't stop wondering if those whispers hid something more. At lunch, two managers talked at the next table. "She doesn't waste time," one said. "Maybe he reminds her of someone," the other replied. "Or maybe it's exactly what it looks like." Their laughter stung, though he kept his face calm. Inside, a war raged. Could it be true? Could she have noticed him, not as an employee, but as something more? The memory returned again. The way she once paused in a meeting, eyes resting on him just a fraction longer than necessary. The way her hand brushed his once when passing documents, so quickly withdrawn, yet his skin remembered. And then there was her silence. She never explained herself. Not in the ticket. Not in the brief glance that morning. It was as if she was daring him to come find the answer. He closed his laptop, the noise of the office fading into a dull hum. Whatever her reason, power, business, or something unspeakably personal, he knew the truth would only come once he stepped into her world. And for reasons he didn't dare admit, he wanted to. That night, sleep refused to come. He lay awake in the dark, the glow of his phone screen illuminating the flight confirmation he'd read 100 times. The seat number was there, the departure gate, her name at the bottom. Each detail felt heavier the longer he stared at it. His mind replayed every moment he had seen her. The small things he'd dismissed before, now returning with sharper edges. The way she lingered just a second longer when she said his name. The almost imperceptible smile she gave him after a presentation when others had only sighed. The quiet glances in the hallway that, at the time, he thought were chance. Were they chance? Or had she been watching him all along, quietly, carefully, with feelings she never allowed herself to show? The thought unsettled him. She was 60. He was 23. The world would never understand. His friends certainly wouldn't. Already the office was circling with gossip sharp enough to wound. If he stepped onto that plane, he would be stepping into more than her world. He would be stepping into judgment. But under the weight of those doubts was something he couldn't shake. The memory of her eyes. In them, behind the steel and control, he had seen something unspoken. Something human. Something longing. He rolled over, pressing a hand to his chest where his heart pounded restlessly. What did she want from him? What if it was only business? A test, a mission, some high-pressure assignment he wasn't ready for. Worse? What if the whispers were right? What if she wanted something that would change the way everyone looked at him forever? He shut his eyes, but instead of sleep, images flooded him. Her face lit by the boardroom lights, her hands folded with authority, her voice steady yet warm when she addressed him directly. He remembered thinking once, without meaning to, "She doesn't look 60. She looks timeless." When dawn broke, his decision was made. He couldn't ignore it. Whatever waited on the other side of that ticket, he had to know. Not just because she had asked, but because something deep inside him wanted to understand her. The woman behind the legend, the one who, for reasons he couldn't yet name, had chosen him. The plane ticket lay on his desk like a sealed letter of fate, and he was ready to open it. The airport buzzed with the usual rhythm of departures. Hurried footsteps, rolling luggage, voices echoing against tall glass walls. Yet for him, every sound faded beneath the weight of the ticket clutched in his hand. He had flown before, but never like this, never with his name tied to hers. At the gate, the attendant smiled politely as she scanned his boarding pass. "First class?" she said, handing it back with a nod. He managed a stiff smile, though his palms were damp. First class wasn't for rookies. First class was for executives, for people like her. And yet, here he was, walking down the jet bridge with the kind of ticket that whispered of something more than business. He sank into his seat, wide leather cushions swallowing his nervous frame. Around him, seasoned travelers flipped through newspapers and sipped champagne. He sat rigid, staring at the window. Clouds shifted outside, but all he could see was her face. The way she had glanced at him last week in the hallway, her eyes softening before she turned away. The way her voice had wrapped around his name like she was holding it in her mouth longer than she should. As the plane lifted, so did the knot in his stomach. Where was she sending him? Why him? The email had given no details, only instructions to arrive. Yet, beneath the questions, a strange feeling had begun to take root. Not just fear, not just curiosity. Something else. Something that made his chest tighten when he thought of her waiting at the other end. He closed his eyes, the hum of the engines steadying his racing thoughts. Somewhere in the silence, he imagined her that night. Perhaps in her home, alone, writing the email that changed everything. Did she hesitate before pressing send? Did she linger over his name as she typed it? The thought struck him like a wave. She could have chosen anyone, any of the bright, eager faces that filled her company. Yet she chose him, a rookie, 23. And now, thousands of feet above the ground, he was flying straight into whatever truth she had been holding back. As the clouds stretched endlessly outside the window, he realized the ticket wasn't just a summons. It was an opening into her world, into her silence, and maybe into her heart. The car waiting for him at the airport was sleek, black, and silent. The driver said nothing, only opened the door and nodded. The rookie slid inside, clutching his bag like it might anchor him against the storm in his chest. The city blurred past, glass towers and neon lights giving way to quieter streets, until at last the car slowed before a building that looked nothing like the towering offices he was used to. It wasn't a skyscraper. It wasn't marble and glass. It was her home. The driver opened the door, and for a moment he stood there, unable to move. Then the door opened again, from the inside. And there she was. She didn't wear the sharp suits of the office. Instead, a simple dress flowed over her frame, elegant yet soft. Her hair, silver and refined, framed a face both commanding and weary. But it was her eyes that caught him, steady, searching, and filled with something he had never seen in her boardroom gaze. "You came," she said softly. "No speeches, no orders. Just 3 words, trembling slightly at the edges." He swallowed, nodding, his voice caught in his throat. "Yes." For a long moment they stood facing one another, the air charged with everything unspoken. Then she stepped aside, allowing him in. Her home was warm, quiet, filled with books and the faint scent of roses. Nothing about it screamed of power. Instead, it whispered of solitude, of evenings spent alone, of a life that had built empires but carried emptiness within its walls. She led him into a study, where 2 glasses and a bottle of wine waited. Her hands moved gracefully, though he noticed the faintest tremor when she poured his glass. "I imagine you have questions," she said, her tone calm but her eyes betraying something else. Nerves, anticipation, perhaps even fear. He wanted to ask everything at once. Why him? Why the ticket? Why the silence? But as he looked at her across the room, words failed. All he could see was the woman behind the title, powerful yet vulnerable. Her gaze locked onto his, like she was waiting for something she had no right to ask. For the first time, he wondered if she had been carrying this moment for far longer than he had. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he wanted to run from it or toward it. The wine sat between them, half finished. But it wasn't the drink that left his heart unsteady. It was her. The way she leaned back in her chair, her usual armor of command, nowhere to be seen. The silence between words stretched longer than in any meeting, yet it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. "You must wonder why you're here," she said at last. Her voice was quiet, stripped of its boardroom edge. He nodded, though his lips were dry. "I do." Her eyes lingered on him, soft but searching, as though she was measuring whether he could handle the truth. But instead of answering, she looked away, her gaze settling on the window where the city lights flickered faintly in the distance. "When you've lived as long as I have," she said slowly, "you learn to bury certain parts of yourself. People expect strength. They expect answers. They don't ask about loneliness. They don't ask what it costs." He felt her words more than he understood them. She was 60. She had lived lifetimes before he'd even finished school. And yet, sitting across from her now, she didn't feel untouchable. She felt human. Her hand brushed the stem of her glass, fingers trembling ever so slightly. "You remind me of something I thought I'd lost a long time ago," she whispered. His chest tightened. She didn't look at him when she said it, as if the confession itself was too dangerous to speak directly. But he heard it, felt it. The weight of something unspoken pressed between them. "I don't know what you see in me," he said softly, surprising himself with the honesty in his voice. "But I feel it. Whatever this is, I feel it." Her eyes snapped back to his, and for the briefest moment her guard fell completely. It was there. The affection she had been carrying silently, the longing she had hidden beneath power and reputation. Just a flicker, but undeniable. She quickly looked down, her composure sliding back into place like a curtain. Perhaps I've said too much. But he knew she hadn't. She had only begun. And as the night wore on, he realized this wasn't just about a ticket or a summons. This was about a woman who had been loving him quietly, secretly, and could no longer keep it buried. The night stretched on. Their conversation drifted between pauses and half-answers, like both were circling something neither dared say aloud. Eventually, she excused herself to fetch another bottle of wine from the cellar. Left alone in her study, he let his eyes wander. The room told a story she never would. Framed awards lining the walls, shelves stacked with books worn at the edges, photographs of boardrooms and conferences. A life built on achievement. A life admired from a distance. But on the desk, half covered by a folder, lay something different. A notebook, its leather edges frayed, a pen tucked carefully inside. He hesitated, then glanced toward the doorway. The silence of the house pressed around him. He lifted the cover just slightly. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. And there, on the first page he saw, was his name. He froze. Her words were not corporate notes or business reminders. They were reflections, observations, sentences written in a tone that carried warmth instead of strategy. He carries himself with an honesty I don't often see anymore. When he speaks, there's a spark in him that makes me remember a time when I still believed in possibility. It frightens me how much I notice him. His breath caught. She hadn't just seen him as another employee. She had been watching, feeling, writing about him in ways she had never spoken aloud. The notebook wasn't strategy. It was confession. He closed it gently, his pulse racing. By the time she returned, he was sitting upright, pretending to study the books on her shelf. But his eyes found hers the moment she entered. And though she smiled faintly, trying to mask her nerves, he saw it now. Saw what had been hidden all along. She set the bottle down and poured quietly, avoiding his gaze. For the first time, he understood why. She wasn't afraid of power. She wasn't afraid of judgment. She was afraid of him knowing. But he did. And that knowledge changed everything. The second bottle of wine remained mostly untouched. Words had slowed, replaced by silences that felt heavier than anything spoken. She sat across from him, her hands folded tightly, her eyes fixed on the rim of her glass, as if the truth might spill out if she dared look at him too long. Finally, she exhaled, a long, trembling breath. "I imagine you've guessed by now." His heart pounded. He said nothing, waiting. "I didn't bring you here for business," she continued, her voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. "There is no project, no assignment, no hidden agenda." Her gaze lifted, locking onto his. "I brought you here because I couldn't keep lying to myself." The words settled between them, sharp and fragile at the same time. His throat tightened. "I've led a life where control was everything," she said. "I built walls so high no one could climb them. And for years it worked. People respected me, feared me, but no one saw me." She paused, her voice breaking just slightly. "Until you." He felt the weight of it, heavier than any whisper in the office, heavier than the ticket itself. "The first day you walked into my company, you carried yourself with this light. You reminded me of something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope, possibility, the way love once felt before it was taken from me." Her eyes shimmered, unblinking, and I hated myself for noticing, for feeling, for wanting. "You're 23, I'm 60. It makes no sense, but no matter how I tried to bury it, it only grew stronger." The silence after her confession stretched like a fragile thread between them. He could hear his own pulse thundering in his ears. "I sent you that ticket," she whispered, "because I couldn't live another day pretending I didn't feel this way. If you hate me for it, if you walk out that door, I'll accept it. But I needed you to know, just once, I needed to be honest." Her voice broke on the last word, and for the first time he saw her not as the CEO, not as the untouchable woman of power, but as someone stripped bare, trembling with the risk of love. And in that moment, he realized the shocking truth. The ticket hadn't been an order, it had been a confession. The room seemed to close in around him after her words. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. All the whispers, the rumors, the doubts he had carried, none of them came close to the truth that now stood bare before him. She had loved him quietly, secretly, from the very start. He tried to speak, but his mouth was dry. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to," she replied quickly, her tone trembling but firm. "I only needed you to hear it. Whatever you feel, I'll accept it." She began to turn away, as though bracing for rejection, her hands clasping together so tightly her knuckles whitened. But something inside him shifted. For weeks, he had told himself it was curiosity, admiration, maybe even fear that kept her in his thoughts. Yet now, with her confession hanging in the air, the truth rose like a tide he could no longer deny. It wasn't just her authority that drew him in. It was her. "You think I don't feel it too," he said softly. Her eyes lifted, startled. "I tried to ignore it," he admitted. "I told myself it was respect or just nerves. But every time you looked at me, every time you said my name, I felt something. Something I couldn't explain, and I didn't want to, because it scared me." He leaned forward, his voice steadying. "But I can't deny it anymore. I don't see a 60-year-old CEO when I look at you. I see a woman who has been in my head, in my heart, every day since I walked into this company." Her lips parted, but no words came. He reached across the space between them, his hand hovering until she finally let her slip into it. Her fingers were cool, trembling, yet she didn't pull away. Their hands fit together with a strange, undeniable certainty. For the first time, the rookie stopped thinking about what others might say or how impossible it seemed. All that mattered was the woman sitting across from him, powerful yet vulnerable, older yet timeless, carrying a love she had hidden until it broke free. And in that moment, he knew he wasn't running anymore. He was choosing her. Sometimes, love doesn't follow rules or timelines or the expectations the world tries to force upon us. It appears quietly in stolen glances and unspoken words, and then one day, it refuses to stay hidden. For him, it was a single plane ticket. For her, it was the courage to finally let her heart speak. If this story touched your heart, we'd love share in the comments. What moment in his journey moved you the most? And if you were listening closely, you might notice how often his name came up. Drop your answer in the comments. We may feature your name in a shout-out as a thank you for being part of our Fiction Echoes family. If you enjoy meaningful stories like this one, the next chapter is already waiting. Just click the video about to appear, and we'll see you there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a moment of what happens next.